Hello, I'm Charlie Worsham, your host for Mississippi on the Map, a podcast brought to you by Visit Mississippi. This podcast explores why Mississippi is the birthplace of America's music. Well, here we are on Mississippi on the Map. I've been so fired up to have this next guest right here, Michael Hardy. He is Hardy to the world and one of our favorite songwriters here in Nashville, Tennessee, where we're broadcasting from here on Music Row. Our friend Joey Moy's studio in a building that a Mississippian made possible, Mr. Craig Wiseman.
There's a landmark and everything.
Yeah, there's a Mississippi trail marker
Yep.
here in Nashville telling his story. But I got to get to the serious issues first here. So, Hardy, you grew up in Neshoba County, Mississippi. You got a bunch of family, I guess, that went to state. Mm-hmm. And you are a dyed-in-the-wool Mississippi State fan.
I am, yeah.
You met your wife in Oxford,
Oh, no.
and she went to Ole Miss. So here's the question. What do y'all do when it's the Egg Bowl?
It's just exactly what you think.
Yeah.
And it's been, it's been back and forth a decent bit. I think we've won 3 of the last 8 games, which is not great.
Yeah.
But obviously, I watch every state game, but we watch every Egg Bowl. We make a big deal out of it. If we can, we go. Conveniently, we've only been to the Egg Bowl when it's been in Starkville.
Yeah. That helps.
But it's fun. It's fun, and I'm a good loser, so it doesn't make it too it doesn't get really real around the house if we lose or anything like that. But it's definitely really fun when we win.
There's something about being a state fan that kind of prepares you for a life in the music business in a way, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of a big solid victory every 5 years or so, a great season, and then the rest is just okay.
Just slugging it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Goodness. Well, I do love your corner of Mississippi. Of course, Marty Stewart is from there. And I think you just got back from the world-famous Neshoba County Fair.
Literally 2 days ago. We were there all week last week.
That's awesome. Y'all have one of the cabins there.
We do. Yeah, we sure do. And I want to say that our cabin got built in like 1958 or something like that, which has been my dad's entire life, which I think is really cool. I'm convinced that nobody loves the fair more than my dad. But if you're from Mississippi, which I'm sure a lot of people listening to this podcast are from Mississippi. But if you're not, Google it, because the Neshoba County Fair, there's nothing like it. And now my favorite thing now is, now that I've been in the industry long enough, you know how small of a town Nashville is. You pretty much know everybody that comes through there and plays, because we have entertainment like any other county fair. And 9 times out of 10, if I know them, I'll try to hop back there and say what's up or whatever if I'm there. And they're always the same. They're like, how have I never heard of this place? Because they look around, and it's funny because everybody calls the cabin, they call the cabins houses because they don't know. And I'm like, no, it's not a house, it's a cabin.
Yeah.
But it's really cool because it's such a pure piece of like Americana and like American South, and it's really hasn't changed that much in the last 100 years probably or whatever, and it is a diamond in the rough core piece of Mississippi that is just cool.
Even within Mississippi, there isn't anything like it.
No, and I honestly, they say that there's something similar, I think, in Sweden, but there's like 2 things in the world that are like the Neshoba County Fair, and it's a special place, man.
Yeah. So take me back to your early life growing up there in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Where were you hearing music? What kind of songs played in the house, on the car radio?
Yeah. So I played a lot of baseball, and my dad was a chicken farmer. And what I mean by that is, I feel like a lot of my core music memories were listening to the radio on the way to baseball practice or baseball games, or riding with my dad out to check on the chickens.
Yeah.
One of my first memories of all time, two times that I remember the first time like hearing a song and then like storing that in my brain were of course it's this song too, but Freebird.
Yeah.
Because I learned when I was like 4 years old, I learned like what the concept of radio was, because we heard Freebird on the way home or on the way to my dad's chicken farm, and we were there for a few hours, and then on the way back we heard it again, and I remembered asking my dad, how do you know this song? We just heard it for like on the way out there, and he was like, no buddy, this is an old song, and they play it on the radio all the time. But the memory that really got me, I owe everything to my dad. My mom also loves music, but my dad loves rock and roll, and he like forced it on me at a very young age.
I'm
because
doing the same thing.
How much he loves it. He's like, you're gonna like this. Like you don't have a choice. But in the mid '90s, he had a cassette tape and put it in his cassette player in his truck and said, "This is Pearl Jam," and "Alive" was the first song that I heard, and I just that like guitar riff or whatever it was, it did something to me, and I feel like a lot of musicians have that moment or whatever. But I mean, my dad was the reason that I am like obsessed with music. And we had back in the day, I'm sure you had the same thing, we had like a stereo system in our house, and it was a whole console, and underneath was just two giant stacks of CDs, and it was like John Cougar Mellencamp and the Eagles and Boston, Bad Company. Just a little hodgepodge of a lot of great classic rock and a little bit of country. But I mean, music was a top 3 probably thing in our family, value or whatever you want to call it in our family.
Absolutely.
It's really important.
So all that great music you're hearing and so much classic rock that because I feel that same way. I grew up on my parents' record collection, so to speak, and I feel like I'm carrying that tradition forward. Do you have an earliest memory of some of that music where you made your earliest connection to, okay, this is music I love, and this is what lights me up in life, but oh my gosh, they came from where I'm from, or like made a connection between where you were growing up and the music you were in love with?
I mean, Marty obviously had a huge...
I mean, you can't be growing up there and not know...
Right.
Look to him as
there was another
hero.
one, though, and I've never really talked to him about this, but later on, when I was probably more like a teenager, so I'm sure you're familiar with the band Pearl River. Are you?
Yeah. I feel like I've heard of them, but no.
So there was a band from Philadelphia. A couple of guys I think were from Meridian, but there was a band from Philadelphia in the early 90s that came to Nashville, and they had a little moment named, they were called Pearl River.
Pearl River.
It was Jeff Stewart, who I know all these guys now, and they all just, they live around Philadelphia, and Chuck Etheridge. Can't think of all their names, but Pearl River moved up to Nashville. They signed a record deal. They had a big single. It actually, it didn't really chart or do super great, but they had a little moment.
They had a moment, yeah.
And so from Pearl River, Derek George was in Pearl River.
Oh, wow.
And so when I was, and he was really young, he was like the Tommy Shaw of Pearl River, where he was like, I think 16 or 17 or something like that.
Wow, yeah.
But later on, Derek started writing hits, and I just remember that kind of happening, and then hear it. My mom, like, a song would come on the radio and be like, "Oh, I think Derek wrote that." And I was probably 14 or 15 when he started kind of having hits as a writer, and that was a big moment for me where I definitely, this was even before I had written a song, but it just kind of started to register with me of like it can be done kind of thing.
Right.
Because Marty's story is so different, and he was like this virtuoso at 13 years old, and no kid that age played music like that and played that well and all that. So he got snatched up, and he was
off and running a different
at 13 years
path
old,
way,
right?
yeah.
And so I don't know. It became real to me, or just it definitely enlightened me. That just a guy like Derek, and who was just and still is a very normal dude that just moved to Nashville and did a thing, and is now a hit songwriter. And that was definitely the first time that I was like, wow, okay, it's possible,
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because you've said often in interviews that you originally set out, when you set your sights on Nashville, to be a writer. You kind of stumbled into being an artist almost accidentally, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess Derek would have been the first template you had from real life to say, oh, this is a path, I could take this.
Yeah. I just kind of went the opposite. I've flip-flopped from his story. He started out as an artist and
ended up writer. And yeah.
But even all that to be said, my Nashville story, I just moved here like on a complete and total whim. No intention, I've been like that a lot in my life, where I just haven't given a lot of things a lot of thought, and I just sort of have done them. And so, I definitely didn't move up here thinking like there's other people from Philadelphia that have done it and I can do it too. It was very like, I was kind of bored and didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and had written a couple songs, and my sister, who moved up here, and she kind of tried to do the artist thing for a little while, and I really can't say I put in a ton of thought into moving up here, other than like I'll just sort of try it out, and then once I got here, I really kind of everything, I started taking it more seriously as the years went by and all that.
So when you first got out of the state, and I believe it would have been to go to MTSU as the first time, or were you in Nashville before you started college?
No, I moved to Nashville in May of 2010, and with the intention of going to MTSU that following fall.
Okay. What was that? Because my version of that was I did my college time in Boston, and it was my first time really for a long period of time being Berkeley.
Oh, okay, cool.
Being outside of the state, and it's something that comes up a lot on the podcast, talking to Mississippians. It's almost a rite of passage. You kind of have to go out of the state, leave home, and then in doing so, I feel like you learn so much more about where you're from being away from it. What was that like for you the first time you were outside the state's borders? How do you feel like you carried your Mississippi, so to speak?
Well, I think that the biggest thing for me that helped me just learn just the nuance, everything about my hometown was travel for me, I feel like. And seeing not only Nashville, but when I was, in 2015, I joined a band as a bass player and played with that band for like 2 years. CJ Solar, I don't know if you know him.
Yeah, I know CJ.
And I played for him for 2 years, and that to me really shed light on. I've never heard it been put that way, but really shed light on Philadelphia was going and seeing like every other small town and every other county fair and all that kind of stuff in the world.
It was really the road life, you're saying, more than moving in
I think so, yeah, because Nashville was so close, and I don't know. It just, to me, I feel like I learned the most by traveling. I don't really even know how to describe that, but the one cool thing I feel like that I definitely learned by traveling to different small towns, and people can say I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but I don't care, is how unique Philadelphia is.
Yeah.
Just by seeing a lot of other small towns, and just, I don't know, there's so many, to me, just like, I don't know, it's just very quirky. The fair has a lot to do with that, but even like the small pocket of Native American, the Choctaw tribe and the casinos, and when you grow up in that bubble. And by bubble, I just mean like you just literally hardly ever left town.
Right.
30 minutes away was like, might as well have been 5 hours. If you had to go to Decatur or Union or something, it was like, that took a whole day, it seemed like. But yeah, that just, when you live in that bubble, you don't take it for granted, but you just don't realize that where you live is not like everywhere else. So I owe that to travel. Like actually just going on the road, I think more than just coming up here.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Native American culture there, and anybody that knows you, I feel like is aware of how passionate you are about going out into the woods and looking for arrowheads and other artifacts. And that is a thing about Philadelphia. I've been to Philadelphia. I've fortunately had the chance to be there a couple times, and there's not really, you don't pull off the interstate into Philadelphia. You got to want to be going there.
You have to be. Yeah, that's a I tell everybody we're like, there's a few pockets of Mississippi that are like the furthest points from an interstate,
right? And
we're one of them to a certain extent, because you have, is it 59 that runs through Memphis and through like Grenada that goes through that? Is it 59?
Well, I-55.
55.
We're right yeah.
And then you've got 20, but anyway, we're kind of right in the middle of an interstate triangle, so you definitely have to either be lost or go into the casino to know where Philadelphia is.
Yeah.
Because it takes you, I always tell everybody, you get off the interstate at Tuscaloosa and you drive 2 more hours down a bunch of highways and you're in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But it's off the beaten path for sure.
Yeah. But you did grow up, there's I guess the word would be a confluence of cultures unique in Philadelphia, where you got the countryside of it, you got a Black American experience in the blues, you got the Native American with the Choctaw there. Tell me a little more about the inspiration you get from growing up in Choctaw country, and because there has to be, if you love to find arrowheads the way you do, there's more than just finding arrowheads to that story.
this really, a lot of it has come with old age and I think maturity, but I love Native American culture and the story. I don't love the way the story ended, but just how why I'm so obsessed with it is because I'm an outdoorsman and I love to hunt and I love to fish and I love to do all that. And when I find an arrowhead, especially in Mississippi, and more specifically, we have one creek that rides through my hunting camp, and I can find arrowheads in that creek every now and then. And to think that some guy that was probably my age or probably half my age handcrafted this thing and was running around hunting the same thing that I'm hunting right now.
Right. Literally,
people don't realize, but 5, 7, 8, 9, even 10,000 years ago is like the coolest thing to me. And that people, and that in a way, although I'm not Native American, and if I have any in me, it's not a whole lot, but that part of that culture of being an outdoorsman and being a hunter and a fisherman has never left. I think is so cool, and you can find actual proof of that right under your feet. And I just, I think everything about Native American culture is very cool, but to me, that's what I love about it. I just think it's the coolest thing. You pick it up and you're like, man, I don't know where this came from, but I don't know who made it, but it's I'm the first person to touch it in a very, very long time, and that's something to cherish,
I've always felt that there's sort of a biblical vibe to Mississippi because of how ancient it is as a place, and exactly what you're saying, certain aspects of the way people have lived on that land for not just centuries, millennia, haven't changed. And so when you can live your life in parallel to that, you're connecting to something ancient. And when you're a creative like you and I are, that can really inform the art you create, be it a song or a story. I mean, I think about William Faulkner's got the story about the bear hunt.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
dude.
it's a common theme for Mississippians. Even your latest song, I mean, you've got Country, this, which I feel like is going to be a very Mississippi record.
Yeah.
And your new song Bottomland, which is just dripping with Mississippi imagery and emotion. I was going to ask you, what is the most Mississippi lyric you feel like you've ever written? And it may be Bottomland, I don't know, but
it's definitely up there for me. I mean, let's just go with that, because I feel like anything that talks about like a whippoorwill, that just immediately takes me home. That's a big one. So I've probably got 10 songs that say whippoorwill in it, but anything like that to me, or anything that has to do with like the swamp, because in Neshoba County, a lot of it, especially the north side, is kind of in the Pearl River bottom, and so we got cottonmouths and all that kind of stuff everywhere. And but yeah, when I talk about that kind of stuff, I mean, I go back to Mississippi, and I don't go anywhere else. You know what I mean? Yeah. We have we have a camp house, and it's like essentially a triple wide trailer on just 60 acres of land, and part of that's where we hunt, but that's where I go in my mind every time, and I pull from it because I love it, and I'm so fond of it, and my memories of that place, and I still go back all the time, but are so potent. And I know that there are so many people out there that know what I'm talking about. You know, when I go back there and when I sing about that kind of stuff. So that's definitely where I go.
So Hardy fans are going to know what you're talking about when they hear you sing Bottomland. But let's say somebody listening right now stumbled into this podcast, doesn't know anything about country music or you or any of this. What do you mean when you say Bottomland? Is that a
it's
place?
It's a double meaning, because Bottomland, Mossy Oak is a camouflage apparel company, I guess you would call it, at its core. I could be wrong, but I want to say that their the first pattern that they ever made, if it wasn't the first, it was a long time ago, is called Bottomland.
Yeah.
So Bury Me in Bottomland is like the clothes, the camo pattern. And but also, to me, it's the double meaning is just like the swamp.
Well,
like
that
the
river
low,
basin
yeah,
is
exactly.
bottom land. Literally, it's where the water ends up. Yeah.
And so it is a double meaning. And so, people, I love though that with when we wrote the song, the intention was camouflage, but although like I knew that it kind of had a double meaning, but there's so many, I've been reading some comments and stuff, and there's so many people that are like, did you guys know that Bottomland's also like camouflage?
Yeah.
But I love that people are just interpreting it any way they want to, because I think that's the way that we that was the intention. But it means both, just straight up.
Yeah.
Both.
I love that. Man, everything you've been talking about, I see the ways in which your sound is built in many ways from embracing the culture in which you grew up. But now I grew up in Mississippi too, around the same time as you, and I also am aware that sometimes you fall in love with records that good Christian parents might get nervous about. So my question is there anything about your sound that you can point to that you feel like might have been almost comes from rebelling against that? I don't want to say rebelling against the culture, but just is there a rebellious part of how you grew up that you, in making the music you make and creating your sound, you feel like maybe caused some friction there, like that is in opposition to in some ways?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't, and it might be like indirectly against the culture, but I mean, I did not, and I'm pretty open about this. I obviously growing up in a small town and growing up the way I did, just very small town and hunting and fishing and doing all that stuff. I grew up very just southern or rural, whatever you want to call it. But I did not listen to country at all until honestly, till Paisley and Eric Church and like some of the until I started hearing songs that I could actually relate to, because I feel like a lot of the late 90s and early 2000s, a lot of that was very neon culture and it was very dive bar and very adult, and it wasn't quite as good old boy. Like, for example, one country song that I loved, as cliche as it is, but growing up, was Country Boy Can't Survive, because it had lyrics, and I was like, I'd do that right now.
Right.
I'm doing that. I'll go, me and my buddies are going to check trot lines right now, that kind of thing. And that, in my years of really absorbing music, country music didn't speak to me in that way because I couldn't relate to it at all. So that being said, I just gravitated toward rock and roll, and my dad, did all that he could. And then around the turn of the century, when I, had access to the remote after school and could watch MTV and stuff like that, I really got turned on by rock and roll and a lot of new metal and just everything that was happening in the rock and roll world around then. That's why a lot of my stuff leans a little bit heavier and abrasive and metal and all that is just because I didn't listen to country. So I grew up country, so I can speak the language, and I like, my lyrics, I can't not write a country lyric, but musically, it's because I literally just was obsessed with rock and roll and just didn't even touch country until way, way, way later.
Well, that makes total sense to me, and I've said it on this podcast many times now. I mean, Mississippians are natural-born storytellers, and that's what my curiosity was, is that season of your life, you're coming home from school and turning on MTV. How did your parents take that? Was it something they supported and they trusted, like, okay, this might sound weird to our ears, but we're going to go with it because he loves it? Or did that cause any friction for you?
No, it definitely caused some friction. I remember, that was also the burnt CD era. Sorry, we all did it.
Yeah.
But I remembered, also I'm a big Eminem fan.
Yeah.
I just love, he's a genius, I think. And I remember two separate times. Once I'd burnt a CD of I think it was the Eminem Show or one of his earlier records, and I was listening to it on our swing outside, the loudest setting, and my mom came out there to tell me supper was ready or something, and she heard me listening to Eminem, and she was like, nope. Yeah. Nope. And another time, which this is my favorite, because a very similar situation, I borrowed my best friend's Kid Rock Devil Without a Cause CD.
Yeah.
And my dad told me that I couldn't listen to that. And now my dad is like the biggest Kid Rock fan of all time. So it's funny how times change. But yeah, I don't blame them at all. They were they had no. I was like a scrappy little baseball kid. Like they didn't know that any of that I was hearing that and and I didn't know even, but being inspired by that music and whatever, parlay that into a career of making music, and so they were just doing what they thought was right, and not to say that it wasn't, you know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, there was a little bit of that for sure.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of like, you don't need to listen to that till you get older kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think that can be healthy, and I'm so curious too because you hit the nail on the head. I love the rock influences you put into your music. I've been fortunate to be in the studio with you working on parts of the Mockingbird and the Crow, which I think is a brilliant record. And I love your songwriting. At the core of everything you do, I see that storyteller thread, and I'm so curious because also in researching, I think that you had a grandmother that had a beauty salon, maybe?
Yeah, my mom's mom.
Your mom's mom. So I know there's storytellers in your history and your family. Who are the great storytellers in your life? They probably never wrote a song in their life, but I'm sure that became a part of what helped you develop your storytelling skills through the writer's pen.
It's really funny that you mentioned. I've never really thought about that, but I don't know if it wasn't just my family. It could just be a part of like an older culture in general, but like Southern culture, there is so much storytelling. I feel like everything was detailed too. Like my grandfather would, tell a story about how he like wrecked his truck in the Delta one night but would describe the guy he was with and how he was tall and he had, this certain haircut, just like irrelevant, but just like extreme detail. And my dad's the same way. I mean, literally just sitting, it sounds so cliche, but it was so real. Like we'd be at the deer camp just sitting around a fire or something and people are just telling stories like all night. I've never really thought about how much of that I absorbed, but I had to have gotten it from somewhere. So I'm sure that had something to do with it. But my mom and my dad both are great storytellers. My mom is very detailed and very just intricate with her storytelling. So I'm sure I get a lot of that from her. But I do think there's a podcast, and I have to find it and send it to you, but that I love, that it reminds me of people I grew up with. And there's actually a guy on there that my dad actually did grow up with that is on there. But it's these old redneck dudes from Alabama. And
Hayden, Alabama weather forecast or something.
And it's like just a bunch of old hunter
yes,
dudes.
I know who you're talking about. They just sit and tell stories. And
it's the coolest thing in the world.
Yes.
It is again, like a piece of Americana. It's like these unique, crazy, a lot of it is like hunting and fishing stories. But man, that's so cool. And that's literally the circle that I grew up in, but I was just a 10-year-old boy listening to all these crazy stories.
Well, that's one of those things. I mean, to go back to the Choctaw influence that you have, and I wrote this down because I wanted to remember the name. But there's a famous burial mound.
Nanawaya.
That's it.
Nanawaya.
And when I think back to the arrowheads that you find, telling stories is just as ancient. And I mean, you can look on the walls of caves around the world from native cultures. What are they doing? They're telling stories. It helps us make sense of who we are and where we're going and how we feel and what's going to happen. And so I think it is. You've kind of chosen something that's been there all along that Mississippi, I think, is particularly suited for.
I heard something really interesting a couple of years ago that talked about how storytelling has diminished, throughout through generations, and how it's been replaced by binge watching TV shows. How you can put on The Office and you can watch an episode 100 times, because before TV, that's what people did to entertain themselves. Although they had heard a story 1,000 times, would be like, Charlie, tell that story about the thing. And now we've replaced that obsession in our brain with like watching a TV show.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that, back in the day, that's all you had to give to the next generation when it comes to things that happened in the past, were just to tell the story.
Right.
And there's no telling how much the story, the plot, changes throughout years.
It's like a gemstone that gets polished every single time you tell it. And that's part of what's so great is the embellishment. Man, I'm sitting here thinking about that and about what a great storyteller you are. Is there a moment that you recall when you've been the most proud to be from Mississippi?
Oh man. A big one for me was, I hope this doesn't sound shallow, but when I got to come back and play, I was so far the only, but the first person to play a show at Dudy Noble Field, which is Mississippi State's baseball stadium. That I felt a lot of pride because I'm from there was the main reason, but I grew up going to that stadium and going to baseball games, and I love Mississippi State University. And
you're a baseball kid at heart. I mean,
yeah,
that's all the things. It's your music dream. It's baseball. It's your family.
Yeah. So I don't know, that one stands out the most. I mean, I'm very thankful, and I've done a lot of things that I'm proud of, and that I'm just very thankful for. But that to me stood out because I got to come back home and celebrate my success with my friends and with however many people were there, and that was a cool one for me for sure.
So this will air in September, and I'll trust you to know how much you can share. But I've heard a rumor that you might have just collabed some with Mississippi State on some other
I have.
ventures.
It'll be whenever if this airs after the first home game, then we're good. And I think it will be. But that was like the coolest thing ever. So the Mississippi State's AD Zach Selman texted me and just asked if I would like to be a part of the home game hype video that they play before every game, and I was like, yes, where do I need to be and when do I need to be there?
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of a funny story. So at first he was like, can you make it to Starkville? And I was like, I don't think I can, man. Do you have a team that you could send up here and we could kind of, we could go out in the woods and sort of fake it, in a way, which happens a lot. He was like, yeah, sure. But then Callie and I last minute decided to go to the beach, and then from the beach to the fair. And Philadelphia is only an hour from Starkville. And so I texted Zach and I was like, hey, I'm actually going to be closer to Starkville than I thought. Could we actually move it back to Starkville? And he was like, great. So I'm at the fair. I have no clean clothes. I have no long pants. I only have flip-flops and like all this stuff. So I literally get up Wednesday morning and I drive to Starkville. And I had to stop by my best friend's house out in a community out called Sandtown in Neshoba County. Go in his house and get a pair of boots. Yeah. And then as soon as I pulled into Starkville, I ran into Walmart and grabbed a pair of long pants and like a collared shirt, like this gray collared shirt, and a Mississippi State hat. And then I went to the field house to meet everybody. But I just thought it was funny. I don't know. Oh man,
who's your stylist? The Starkville Walmart.
Yeah, Starkville Walmart, brought to you by Wrangler.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. I kind of laughed at myself even in the moment. I was like, how funny would it be if somebody, happened to see me and I'm like running and walk, because I was kind of running late a little bit and I was just snatching a pair of, checking the sides and snatching a pair of pants and a shirt off the wall and running right back out. But it was a really cool moment. And again, a lot of my early memories and a lot of my favorite memories are just Mississippi State athletics. And my dad did a great job of taking me to football games and baseball games and basketball games. And so it's a really just a crazy full circle moment. And the shot, I hope it doesn't matter even if it comes out before, but the shot ends with me like in the middle of Davis Wade Stadium and saying like, something about God's country, and it was completely empty and I'm on the 50-yard line, and I was like, this is I've done a lot of cool stuff, and this is like one of the coolest things I've ever done, if not the coolest. But I was honored to do that.
I feel that. I've got my dad's old cowbells from
hell yeah.
That was his first attempt at college, was at State.
That's awesome.
He had to go over to Delta State to finish it. That was another story, but
that's awesome.
It was right here in the Mississippi Delta where more than 100 years ago, black sharecroppers and laborers gave America its own musical identity. Drawing on the sounds and traditions of their native Africa and the struggle of their American experience, the blues was born. This land was the epicenter of musical creativity, offering Saturday night liberation and salvation on Sunday morning. The sounds of Mississippi gave rise to gospel, gave country music its twang, gave R&B its soul, jazz its blue note, and rock and roll its king. If you love music, there's no better place to discover its roots and its future than in Mississippi, the birthplace of America's music.
you mentioned Callie, and I mispronounced her name earlier in the episode. I apologize.
Oh, did
Callie.
you? I didn't even know.
I said Kaylee. I should have known better.
That happens a lot. It is totally okay.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
So, and I love, because I've heard you talk about y'all met at the Lyric in Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you have a lyric story. My lyric story is I was playing a show with Brent Cobb, and he broke a string, and so I jumped in and sang while he changed his guitar string.
Oh,
that was my lyric story.
That's awesome.
But I love Oxford, and I am a State fan too. I'm for whoever's playing. I root for State in the Egg Bowl. But I'm curious about what drew Callie to Ole Miss, and now that she has married into a Mississippi family, what is her favorite thing about Mississippi?
So she, Callie is just such a adventurous person in general. I'm sure there's a way better word to describe her, but when she graduated high school, she had great grades and very driven, and she wanted to, she's from California and it's beautiful and there's a lot of great opportunity, but she said, I want to go to like a real college experience and somewhere that a culture, a place that I've never been to. So she toured a few schools in the SEC, and she fell in love with Ole Miss.
Yeah.
And she does tell a funny story that she thought that all the guys there would have cowboy hats on and like belt buckles and be walking around, and then she sees the guys that are at Ole Miss. She's like, these are what they look like.
Yeah.
I got to throw a little jab, but she just wanted a different experience, and that embodies her, or she embodies that, whatever, so much. That's so much a part of her personality. But yeah, she chose Ole Miss, and she loves Mississippi. She really, really, really loves like small town culture, and she and I both love this, but how there is like such a small degree of separation between so many people, because there's so many. It's a state full of small towns, and I swear to God, you're like, oh, I'm from Bruce, and you're like, and you met a complete stranger on an airplane. You're like, oh, I know a guy from Bruce. Do you know so and so? And they're like, yeah, I know that person.
Yeah,
that's something that I think she's always been fascinated by, is just how small of a world it gets down there, and again, how slow it is and how simple it is. She loves all that. I mean, she grew up in North County, San Diego, so kind of paradise a little bit. I kind of pick at her. I'm like, you grew up at Truman Show, like, come on, but it was beautiful. She's from Encinitas, and it's a beautiful beach town, but she loves everything about like Southern culture and just the slowness of it, and just everything around that, just a small town kind of vibe. She loves it. Restaurants and home cooking and just the little antique stores, just the stuff that people don't really think about, or people like me just sort of would drive by every day and take it for granted,
right?
Whatever that may be. Callie loves that kind of stuff. She lives for it.
Yeah, I love that she, on purpose, she went and sought a new experience. I felt that way going to Boston. I was like, man, this is going to be culture shock, but it's going to be the best.
Yeah.
So y'all have a 5-month-old baby girl, Rosie Ryan.
Yeah. Yep.
Tell me, what role do you hope Mississippi plays in her life as she gets older?
Very, very, very important, because of how connected and how attached I am to it. When you ask that question, I think about my camp house, our deer camp, and it's just so important for me to teach her and all of our kids. And I know it'll change, and we'll hopefully have more, and it'll be the same for all of them. But right now with Rosie, just taking her back home and trying to give her a small fraction of the life that I got to live growing up in Philadelphia, because I cherish it so much, and teaching her how to hunt and how to fish, and like I would love for her when she's 20 years old to be able to drive to Philadelphia and know every street and know how to get around. And everything. It means the world to me. Nashville is home, but Mississippi is really home.
OG home, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when I literally, to this day, when I go home, when I go to Mississippi, I just did it there. When I go back to Mississippi, I say I'm going home, and that's in a sense how I want her to feel. I want her to know how important my hometown is and was to me, and to just, if I can just share a little bit of that culture and that value on her, then I feel like I'll have done my job.
Yeah, there's something special knowing you belong to a place that's been around a long time.
Yeah.
And the people there. And Marty Stewart talked about this in his interview on the podcast, but he always mentions the quality of the air, those pine hills. There is something different, and every time I get back within Mississippi borders, the borders of the state, I crack the windows, and it's different. The air is truly different there than it is anywhere else.
It's funny, man. When I go home for a long time and I come back to Nashville, I smell like the city and like the gas, like the whatever it's putting out. It's weird because when I was a little kid and we'd go to Birmingham or even like Atlanta or something, I would smell it, and it has a smell, like it has a industrial smell to it, and I always thought it was cool because I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. Like I'm in a city and everything smells like diesel or whatever it is. Yeah. But when I go home and I come back now, I get that same feeling. But man, that is the truth. And that one of my favorite things in the world. Quote my own song, super cool. But I have in my single right now,
good, yeah.
Favorite country song, and at North Wind Blowing Through a Patch of Pines. And dude, that's catered towards deer hunting because the north wind is the best wind because it's getting cold. But that sound, that like especially early in the morning or late in the afternoon when the wind is blowing and it's just blowing through a big old patch of pine trees, and it just makes a specific sound because they have needles on them, and so it's just the way it cuts through the needles, and there's just something that I feel like Mississippi and Alabama and maybe Georgia have that nothing else, that can't be replicated, and I love it, man. I love it so much.
Man, if I can, I got a couple more questions to ask you, but you talking about that makes me want to know, let's say somebody listening to this gets inspired hearing you tell these stories and they're going to plan a trip to Mississippi. If you could tell them the first place to go, where would you send them and why?
Man, that's tough because I'd want to send them to my hometown.
Well, you can do some honorable mentions too, but
I would say the Gulf Coast is a good place to start, because it still embodies a lot of the culture, but there's a different, like that lowland down there is just it. I feel like really embodies a lot of what Mississippi is, and a lot of swamp land, and I don't know. There's just something to that. Second, let's go. Take a drive. Let's go. Then drive north and go through Philadelphia, because you just drive by the fairgrounds and just look at it and and let it blow your mind, and then I would say go to the Delta.
Yeah.
You have to. I mean, I tell people this all the time, but like rock and roll, in my opinion, owes everything to the Mississippi Delta, because I think that's where it was born, and not even Elvis. Elvis owes his thing to the Mississippi Delta, but that's people know that, but I just think it's the coolest thing in the world, and there's a reason that people from like freaking New Zealand are sitting in Reds right now drinking a beer, listening to some legit old guy play blues. It's because it's literally where it started, and I think it's sad in a way, because I know that there's a lot of poverty, and I know that a lot of it is kind of stuck in it's stuck in time a little bit, but at the same time, it's so authentic, and I don't think that you will get a more authentic Mississippi experience than going to some of those blues bars in the Delta and just hanging out, because that is real. There is nothing that is sugar-coated or fabricated about that. That experience is freaking legit.
For sure. I couldn't agree more. And you're so right about, the blues is obviously, and for good reason, connected to the Delta as a place. But rock and roll, Ike Turner and his band woke up in Clarksdale, Mississippi to drive to Memphis the morning they recorded Rocket 88, which some argue is the start of rock and roll records. And yes, it might have been north of that border in Memphis where that song got recorded, but they packed the car.
That's exactly right.
That morning in Mississippi.
Yep. I tell people all the time, I'm like, we would not have Led Zeppelin if blues did not start in Mississippi.
Yeah.
I remember
that's
the coolest thing ever, dude.
Yeah, I do too. I remember being in high school and hanging out with some friends in the Delta, and they were like, Robert Plant. Robert Plant comes down here all the time just to hang out and be inspired. And I'm like, that tracks.
Yeah, man.
That totally makes sense. Is there a corner of Mississippi that you have yet to see with your own eyes that's on your bucket list?
I have not spent a lot of time in Southwest Mississippi.
Okay.
Southwest and Northeast, really, like Pickwick area also, but only I think once have I ever been to like McComb area, like that whole area. I don't know anything about it. Natchez, really, I've never really been down that way. So I would love to actually have a really quick story. That being said, the only time I've ever been down there, my cousin got married in a tiny town called Liberty, Mississippi, which is in southwest, in the middle of nowhere.
Hometown of Jerry Clower,
That's right, yeah. That's awesome. And we were down there for a couple of days for my cousin's wedding, and my dad and I was probably 14 or 15 maybe, and he was like, well, we had like half a day, and he was like, well, you know, we're not far from the Skynyrd crash site, which is outside of McComb. So my dad and I got in my grandparents' Cadillac DeVille and drove to kind of where he thought, this was before iPhones, so drove to where he kind of thought it was, pulled into a gas station, like a country store,
right,
and asked them, and they said, if you go up the road right up here and knock on this guy's door, it's a Vietnamese man. He can barely speak English, but he owns the property, and if he's in a good mood, he'll take you down there and let you see it. And so we did, and this is so my dad. I would never, I don't have the guts to do this, but pulled up to this guy's house, knocked on his door. He could barely speak English, but he understood what we were talking about, and he said, yeah, sure. And so we followed this guy through a pasture in a Cadillac DeVille, behind his like four-wheeler side by side or something, to the back behind his chicken farm. And then we got out, and he took us way back in the woods, and there was the Skynyrd crash site and the tree. If you can Google it. And I think now it's a little more commercialized, and maybe they've put like a Mississippi landmark and all that. Sure. I don't know. This has been 20 years ago. It was just me and my dad and this Vietnamese dude, and we just kind of stood there and looked around, and he told us, you know, about how every now and then people come by, but there's a tree where throughout, you know, since the crash, I guess in the early 80s, people have come by and they've carved stuff into this one big tree, and you can actually look up and see where a huge part of the canopy is missing because of where the plane went down and all that. But that was in southwest Mississippi, and I haven't been back there since then. So that's definitely a part that I'd love to go back to. Dang,
man, that's one of those stories we were talking about earlier, right there. And also, if you're thinking about traveling to Mississippi, there's your inspiration to go. I mean, my goodness, where else can you do something like that?
No doubt.
Man, before we get out of here, I have a couple questions I've been asking everybody that comes on the show. And one is, what do people get wrong about Mississippi and Mississippians?
I think a big one is that we are uneducated. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think that you have to be a doctor to be educated, but there are a lot of people that I know that might not have finished college or might not have finished high school that are some of the smartest people that I know. Whether that's pure like intelligence or that is like street smarts, which, you know, in Mississippi translates to like, you know, survival skills or whatever you want to call that. Wood smarts, dirt road smarts. Yeah. But I think that's number one, and number two is that there's nothing to see there. You know, that it's not a destination place that you would go.
Yeah.
Because I do think that if you just took a week and drove through the state of Mississippi and just saw all the little cracks and corners, you would truly find that it is one of the most unique places ever, and diverse and everything else. I really believe that.
Well, you say drove, and it makes me think about our first guest on the show, Ketch Secor, who isn't from Mississippi, but made a good point. He said, well, Mississippi's a place where you can take a riverboat odyssey, because, heck, the whole western border is the Mississippi River. You can get on a bicycle and bike the Natchez Trace, or a motorcycle. You can canoe or kayak through those swamps. You can hop on a train. The city of New Orleans still runs, and it goes right through that delta, and is really actually a very historic train. A lot of that music traveled on those train tracks, over the last 100 years. But you're right, it is deceptive in that there's so much to see and do there, and eat and listen to, and all of that. That I think it's kind of a secret weapon. As a matter of fact, if you're an American scholar and you want to know American history, I think the whole, I'm getting ready to interview Wright Thompson, who writes for ESPN and has a book out, and he talks about, made an analogy with something to do in Mississippi with it being the Rosetta Stone of, Mississippi. But I would argue Mississippi is the Rosetta Stone of America. You can understand all of America by examining Mississippi, I think. Or a good chunk of it.
Yeah,
anyway.
man.
And with that in mind, I'd ask you, what do you believe makes Mississippi the birthplace of America's music? Is there a particular part of all that history and culture?
I mean, you know, you can get into the, you know, if you go watch Ken Burns and all that kind of stuff, it's different, and there's a lot that goes into this statement. But I can tell you that who is known as the father of country music, or whatever you want to call it, is Jimmy Rogers, who is from Meridian, Mississippi,
about 30-something miles from
really close to
where
Philadelphia.
You grew up, yeah.
And again, I say Robert Johnson, who is like the founder of the blues. Two major genres, especially right now, the two biggest genres in the world, I think, or at least in North America, are country music and rock and roll. And both of those were founded in the state of Mississippi.
That's right.
Which, you know, I just check the facts,
you
man.
Could even, I that's been said before on the show. It's true. Just look at the facts. And I'd say argue a third major genre, in like that Eminem record that you were listening to that got you in trouble a bit. You know, the current form of what R&B is, which comes from the blues, is at a very popular, like a high water mark right now. It also, I would argue, started in Mississippi in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Okay, so you listed some names, and this is our final question. Let's say you get 4 slots, and maybe some of these names will go on them. Maybe there's some other ones. But who is on your Mississippi Mount Rushmore?
Oh, no way. This is tough.
It's
dude.
hard. I have struggled with mine.
Oh, man. Okay, I would say Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
I'm going to go...
if you want to sneak an athlete, we try to stick mostly music and acting kind of thing. But if you want to get an athlete in there, I wouldn't be mad.
I was going to say Brett Favre.
Were you? Okay.
Yeah. Personally, I mean, he's on mine. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I got to go Robert Johnson.
Yeah.
And, I mean, as far as like just people that have done something incredible with their life, I got to go Oprah.
That's awesome, man. That's my new favorite of the whole series, because it's so representative of the different ways. I think, you know, this is right now a podcast focused on music, but really it goes back to storytelling, and the ways we tell stories flow through different creative paths. And you just listed 4, because I would argue that a career in athletics is just as creative. If you're doing it at that level, you have to have that creativity to be successful.
Man. Yeah. And they're all 4 of those people are from, as far as I know, like small, very small towns, which I think is super cool. Which that's not hard to do in Mississippi, because that's pretty much all there is. But Oprah's from Kosciuszko. Robert Johnson is probably not even from an actual town. I don't even know what town. I mean, Clarksville, technically.
It's funny. I've been doing some research, and I need to go back and do more because I can't remember. He spent certain seasons of his life in Clarksdale, I believe. Certain seasons of his life where Dockery. Have you been to Dockery?
No.
Over near Drew. I think he spent some time there as well, because Dockery, I'm finding out, like Son House, Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters, Pop Staples, maybe Lightning Hopkins. I'm leaving somebody else out. Charlie Patton. They all went through Dockery. Just that one place alone, you know, not to mention the rest of the Delta. But
I have an honorable mention too. I have to.
Yeah, come on.
And I'm not just saying that because we're in the building, but a less popular name, but Craig Wiseman.
Yeah.
Because Craig, the footprint that he has put on the music industry, especially or primarily in country, with Florida Georgia Line, which dominated the 2010s, and now Morgan Wallen, which has completely dominated, and who knows how long will dominate this decade, is at its core completely and totally. Craig is responsible for both of those.
You know, you say that, and you're absolutely right. What's interesting to me, Craig, for people who don't know, is a Mississippian who is one of the greatest songwriters to ever come through Nashville, or any town for that matter. Everything you just said, had Craig Wiseman never had anything to do with FGL or Morgan Wallen, your career, any of that, he still would be worth putting in the Hall of Fame for the work he did in the 90s.
Yeah.
Had he only ever done the work he's done with you and FGL and Morgan Wallen, and not done the stuff in the 90s, you could put him in the Hall of Fame for that.
Yep.
But he actually has done both. And he did sort of create a new type of songwriting career that I don't think existed. You wouldn't have Ashley Gorley if Craig had not laid the blueprint for that.
I think so too. Yep. I mean, 30 plus number ones. He's had a number one in 3 decades. I mean, and not to mention just that his style, like I credit so much of how I write songs.
Yes.
Based his syncopation, which is, this gets into the nerdy whatever parts of it, but the way that, you know, every like just alliteration and assonance and all the English terms that have to do with what it was a rap type style way, the way that he wrote songs. He changed the way that people write songs to this day. And it's like when a line comes out that's like this super cool, wordy, perfectly written line, in my mind, every time I'm like, that's a Craig line. You know what I mean?
You know, another thing you mentioned, that he has 30 number ones, and at this point in time, there are other songwriters in town. There's a handful that have those technical credentials. Mm-hmm. But how many of them have 30 number ones that are chock full of songs like Live Like You Were Dying?
The good stuff.
I mean, we're talking songs of the year number ones. Not all number ones are created equal. And those are unforgettable, songs that mark a generation to some degree.
Yeah, big catalog songs, man. Big catalog songs.
As we get out of here, is there anything that you've got cooking up that you want to tell people about, man? I know you got Country, the record coming. It's on a billboard down there in Philadelphia.
Yep.
Maybe a tour might be in the works to talk about.
Yeah, when does this come out? When does anybody have the official date?
I think it'll be early September.
Tracker
so we
says
can't,
no.
but just for people that might want to come see Hardy live, there might be news on
There's
that.
going to be, I will go on tour next year. I can say that at least. But yeah, Country comes out September 29th.
Is that right? 26th.
September 26th, Country, 20-something songs. Yeah, that's it for now. I mean, I'm just super excited about that, and it's by far the most music I've ever put out at one time, and I'm just, you know, it's all Hardy. It's just a lot of different sounding stuff all on one album, and so stoked about it.
Yeah.
But that's the main thing. That's the number one thing I got going on right now.
You started the Hardy Fund as well, though, recently.
Yes, I sure did.
Tell me more about that. Does it have any connections to Mississippi specifically? I'm sure your scope is beyond Mississippi, but I also would imagine it's connected somehow to. Yeah,
I mean, definitely. That part of our it was long overdue, and I'm so excited to finally have done it. But you know, the way that works and the way that funds work is it's a bucket for that we can give to any charity. But I have a huge focus for Mississippi, and specifically, and eventually my hometown, and just giving back because of how much it gave to me. And the Hardy Fund, and you can donate to that on a website. I feel terrible.
We'll put it in the notes of the episode.
HardyFund.com. What's thehardyfund.com? You can donate to that on thehardyfund.com.
And some of that might end up helping finish the Congress of Country Music that Marty has going.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I drove by there the other day. It's coming along. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's great. Hardy, thank you so much for being on the show.
I had a blast. Thank you so much, man.
Appreciate it, man. Mississippi on the Map is made possible by Visit Mississippi. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to be the first to know about new episodes when they drop.